And thank you for joining us this evening. I have the great pleasure of being here with Paula Wyant. She is the superintendent of the Mark Twain School District, and she wanted to come on just to say how smooth and trouble-free and exciting this last school year was, right? Isn't
Exactly.
that? I mean, it was just, it couldn't have been better.
It was a cakewalk.
Right? Yeah,
it was a cakewalk.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So how are things now? You look at light at the end of the tunnel, everything's back to normal a little bit?
We're getting closer.
Yeah.
We're getting closer. We had a great year in many aspects.
Right.
What we learned is how resilient our system is, and that people really appreciated. I think never have they appreciated more public education, and even with all of its frustrations,
Right.
I think that
Right.
it really became paramount as to what we do. And so, and Calaveras County and Mark Twain did a great job. While we were also one of the earliest, because we had the first case
Yes.
in our district at
Yeah.
Copperopolis. So we learned a lot, and that was prior to my coming to Calaveras County, but the county and the districts did a great job rebounding from that, and we were actually one of the first counties that put together hybrid programs, and we're back. We were back in October.
Right.
Our counterparts about the same time. So where many children in the state just returned a couple of months ago. So
You guys were rock and rolling the whole time, huh?
We were very much ahead of that, and so and it wasn't what everybody wanted. It wasn't
Right.
traditional and what
Right.
we knew.
Right.
Mark Twain did a hybrid model where we did cohorts in the morning and the afternoon. So our kids were on campus 4 days a week for 3 hours, and so we're looking forward. We're committed to going back to a traditional year, so we'll be headed back.
Did you find that, at least with them on the campus part of the time, that they were able to maintain friendships, maintain the interpersonal relationships? Yeah.
Yes.
Because that was the risk for a lot of this stuff, right?
Absolutely. Mental health is, has continued to be a really huge concern, and will go into the future as a
Right.
huge concern.
Right.
We had about 2/3 of our entire population. We're about 800 students, a little less than that, and 2/3 of our kids were on campus regularly, and about 1/3 were home at
Right.
doing a distance learning.
Yeah.
But that was still contact with
Mhm.
teachers every day, and with their classmates via an electronic platform.
Right.
But
Right.
so we were very connected to our kids, and we did not have and do not have some of the horror stories that you hear where kids have just disappeared. Hundreds of kids have just disappeared.
Well, don't you think in some ways, rural districts like we are here is, not always, but for the most part, the teachers and staff, this is their home too. They live here too, right? Isn't that, I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And our
Yeah.
teachers, unlike what was in the news where,
Yeah.
there were groups of teachers in districts that were refusing, our staff, our support staff, our classified staff, and our teaching staff, and not just mine, in
Right.
all the districts.
Yeah.
We have only a few districts in the county, but all of our districts, but I'm especially proud of our Mark Twain staff because they were the champions to go back
Yeah.
early, to get
Yeah.
back, even when myself as an administrator had to be a little bit cautious about making sure that we were following all of the regulations and things
Yes.
like that. They were the ones that were like, we have to get back, we want to get back, we need to get back. So they very much were the voice that parents wanted and kids wanted and needed to hear.
Yeah.
So very much the keepers.
For those who are not familiar with, that don't follow the school districts much in the county, Mark Twain School District, tell us a little about it.
We are a two-school
Okay.
elementary school district. We have Copperopolis in Copperopolis, the town of Copperopolis, and it is a TK through 6. And then those students that are 7th and 8th matriculate up to Mark Twain Elementary, which is an Angels Camp, so about 13 miles apart. And we have just shy of 800 kids, at about 240 at Copperopolis and the rest at Mark Twain. So you have kind of that more familial small school kind of feel at Copperopolis, and then you have, we talk about Mark Twain being the big school, and
yes.
the 7th and 8th graders get to come and be a part of a middle school, junior high atmosphere, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's really nice, and extremely well supported by our communities. Both communities are very active in both schools. So.
Yeah. A question a little bit on enrollments out of COVID. I know there was a lot of people, parts of your district, Copperopolis especially, you have some second homes there and stuff. I know that some areas in the county, like for example, up along the Highway 4 corridor, we know that Hazel Fisher, the school there, I don't know I haven't penciled out, but they had the potential for a significant increase in enrollment, if people felt comfortable going back to the traditional school setting, because there were more rooftops, homes full of people. And do you think there may be some of that in Copperopolis where you may see an uptick in some enrollments that you didn't expect?
We are hoping, we are keeping everything that we can cross to have that happen. We have not seen that.
You haven't seen it as of yet?
We haven't seen that as of yet, but we are hoping so. I do know that we would often get calls from people in the Bay Area, kind of shopping around, are you guys open? And trying to figure that out. So there very much was a part of that. And again, I don't know. I think the kids in our area that people felt confident and comfortable with the rules and regulations. Those kids were in school without a doubt. And then the folks that were a little bit more hesitant, and because they may have had a family member that was at risk, or some family reason not to come back. Those students stayed, and we within the district, and so we did we had some students go into private kinds of situations in education, but we actually had some of those kids coming back in the spring in anticipation, especially when our board early on in the spring went on record saying that we would return and did a resolution that we would return to a traditional school year, traditional hours, and still we figured out how to follow the regulations. We have it in our plans to maintain that 3 feet distance, whether it's necessary by when Cal OSHA and the Department of Ed actually make those final summer decisions. We're prepared to be able to do that comfortably and have everybody back.
Yeah. And it was, it was a fun time for superintendent managing all that stuff, right? Because you had to, your job, you have to manage risk, you have to manage all the rest. It was a hard message at times, because there are a lot of rules and regulations, and I think that all the superintendents, we meet together regularly. Our county office and our county superintendent, Scott Nanick, he has been exceptional. As I said, I'm new to the county, so I came from a county that had 36 school districts versus the 6 that we have, so I wasn't sure what I was in for, but they are extremely supportive, and we support one another, and we really were kind of that touchstone as regulations came out to figure out how to do it, because as you know, the landscape was changing very fast, daily and constantly. And so that did make it hard, and we prize education, and yet certainly I didn't want anyone on my watch to fall ill or have something tragic happen. And that was a hard message, because people it's such an emotional landscape with this pandemic. One of the things we talked before we started rolling is, since we've been, I think people are so tired of talking about COVID in a negative perspective. are there some positives that can come out of this? Like we were thinking, so now that you have kids that are more familiar, technically savvy, teachers that are more technically savvy. Like for example, in the 7th and 8th grade level, is there a way for you to bring in more expert outside curriculum for a class period? I mean, what are some, does it make
Absolutely.
it? Okay.
The electronic platforms help so much. And our teachers, it was really quite nice. I have one of my 7th and 8th grade teachers, long-standing, well-respected teacher, Jeff Arolas. He kind of characterized it as, he was always the veteran that the young teachers looked to find out all the best practices, and the roles were very much reversed. He was looking to.
So I click here. Is that
the younger teachers that were just it was such an easy way to communicate and. Our parents, again, the families were incredibly resilient trying to figure this out. And we got, we became much better at, when we were saturating and what we were doing and how to make it and how to communicate what families should be doing and children should be doing. So there wasn't this constant state of confusion. So yes, I think it opens up a huge world where you can travel the continent and not leave. You can do those kinds of field trips that we could never do.
You could bring a guest lecturer in.
We can pair up classrooms from
other
places and not wait for the mail to come as a pen pal and share units. So there are tons and tons of things.
So you could be sister schools in a real way, interesting. Yeah.
And have those really deep kinds of connections with a broader world that you don't necessarily get. And we all know in rural, education, that's always been a difficult time of how to expose, because we have, we want the urban kids to understand the frog jump and all those wonderful things that we celebrate that would make their life rich, while we need to be able to go to the Guggenheim and things like that we would never be able to do necessarily in a real way. The other thing that it opened up a vast opportunity for staff development in a fiscal and financial way that I truly hope that we don't lose, because it just made it so easy and so respectful of time and fiscal responsibilities to get best practices, and teachers and our classified staff had way more open to them than they've ever had before, just because we could do it virtually. For us and our district, because you don't think 13 miles is that far apart.
It's a long ways.
But when you've got a busy day trying to figure out how to get, and why do we always have to come to Mark Twain for our in-services and things like that, I think many of our meetings are going to be much more efficient. And also just better, because you don't have that drive time. You don't have, you're not leaving your classroom to go sit in another foreign room. And it seems so silly on one hand, but it is huge in the life of a staff person.
Prior to the COVID, we didn't know that business could still function. It was, yes, there needs to be interpersonal interactions, but also sometimes it's just a waste of time, right? Like some of the verbs, well, this could have been a Zoom call, right? Isn't that the,
Absolutely.
It's,
Absolutely. So I think, there are definitely silver linings, and we had kids that quite frankly thrived. And it's interesting, I have a parent that actually has 3 students at different age levels, and she talked about how one of her students, she's torn because that particular child just was so engaged, and it just led his learning, where her other 2 kids, not so much. They needed to be in the classroom. And so she's then as a parent going, how am I going to navigate that?
Is a question, as an educator then, will it give you, in essence, more tools in the toolbox to figure out what learning style works best for which kid? If kids are, some people will only learn in a group setting. Some people are more the introvert, that they just want to go down that knowledge path? Is it
Right.
going to give you
I
more?
think there is.
Okay.
And I think that, one of the things that is nice, before we were on, we were talking a little bit about this new legislation, and I think that many schools didn't have the opportunity to do an independent study program, or they didn't do it necessarily well with rigor. And so some of the new legislation is to honor the families that still either have some hesitancy about returning, or their children really did do well. So I think that we are going to have some of that flexibility, and parents are going to be able to decide that.
A tougher question on that is, with some of that flexibility on an attendance-based funded school district,
Yeah.
does it allow you to actually tick the, does it make it so that it's better for your revenue model as well? Does it make it?
It could. We're
Okay.
hoping
Okay.
that we had started the process for independent study early on in the spring, because we felt like there was still going to need to be that alternative, and we did not want to lose that attendance.
Right.
Because that is huge to
Yeah.
our district. And so we wanted to kind of recoup some of that, and we wanted to be able to offer a program that had rigor. So, and that was a quality home program, and the best of both worlds, where you had the quality education of our district, but you could receive it in a different format. And so I am hoping that we'll be able to do that. There are rules and regulations
Sure.
that are in place,
Sure.
and our state is, still trying to figure out how to, best regulate attendance and audit attendance so that it's real.
So for
And-
for smaller districts, that's a real concern, right?
Right.
For your staffing levels, and to be able to have a predictability as far
Right.
as what
Right.
your
Right.
cash flow stream is going to be.
Exactly, and that is huge, and so
Yeah.
that's why we want to recoup, some of our students for a variety of reasons.
Right.
First and foremost, because we're proud of the education that we offer.
Yeah.
But the reality is it is a fiscal stream that we rely on, and so we want to, in order to be able to do all the things that
Right.
we can do.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to that. We're going to continue to go forward with our independent study program and start getting that out there so that we can get kids registered, and that families know that they
Right.
have that opportunity and can start making that decision.
Yeah.
And so I think that is going to be a pivotal part of education that we're not going to lose.
Yeah.
And that we're just going to get better. And I think I think it'll also even the districts out,
Right.
where,
Right.
parents are perhaps not shopping as much in an area where we can't, all of our districts need our community schools, and our students need their neighborhood schools, I
Yes,
believe.
they do. Yes, they do.
So
Yeah.
whatever format that is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Because schools, it especially like the Copperopolis school, that's a central focus point for that entire
Right,
community, right?
it is.
in a very real way.
Right.
Yeah.
They are very active. The community supports that school in huge ways.
Yeah.
Even during COVID, when there were so many restrictions on things, that the entire community just was always reaching out and looking
Yeah.
for ways, and our
Yeah.
parents were always very active in how to have some normalcy in a not so normal time. So
Yeah.
when we were able to open the playground that our parents had just put in, and for 5 months the kids just looked at brand new equipment, it was definitely an emotional moment of watching those kindergartners
Yeah.
get on that playground. So
Yeah. Looking forward to next year. So what is, I know we have some of these other variants sneaking their way in, but most of the experts, whatever qualifies as experts these days, are saying that, as far as they may be more, easier, may spread a little easier, but traditionally is these, the life cycle of these
Right.
They're not going to be, I mean, we shouldn't have to, people are vaccinated, I mean,
Right.
so you're looking at next year, looking at pretty much normal?
We are.
Okay.
You know, right now, Cal OSHA and CDE are still, and public health are still expecting
A normal,
masks.
yeah.
I
Oh.
expect that will. I'm thinking that may change as we get closer to the school year starting. But right now, the only big requirement
Would still be a
is
mask requirement?
that we need to do masks. But we know that I was always very pleased that even when we were dealing with COVID notifications, because
Yeah.
we might have someone exposed, it
Yeah.
wasn't happening in our schools.
Right.
Our county office did an amazing job,
Yeah.
and our district nurses, which come from our county, were phenomenal in making sure that we were always on point in terms of keeping our kids safe and our families notified. And we actually had a pretty, I don't know the percentage, but Scott Nanick, our county soup, reported that for our size of county and our staffs in our county,
You guys outperformed, didn't you?
We had a great vaccination turnout for, and so we're sitting really quite nicely. That I don't anticipate that we'll need to. And
I think the masks, they'll be done by September. I
think so.
Because otherwise, you start getting into where you're gonna have kids not wanting to go back just because they would have to put a mask back on.
And we do have some parents that feel very strongly
after
about
not
that.
wearing one all summer.
Right.
It's like.
And it's not required anywhere but school. So it's definitely a mixed message, and we know that our students, that they were not.
If you're looking to get attendance numbers back up again,
exactly.
Like, well, you have put the masks back on. It's like, no, I don't think that's not
exactly. So I'm hoping that more intelligent decisions will prevail on that, and they'll just think about how that is just not consistent with what they're stating.
Yes.
As where California is at. So. That's my hope, but everything else we will be back to a traditional setting with sports
programs, all the rest of that stuff that's been kind of
and our board and I believe all of the educators and all of the communities, we want those opportunities for our students. All of us had very successful promotion ceremonies and graduation ceremonies, and I feel like that was kind of the first big test of how are people going to be and what's it going to look like, and our community and in talking to the other superintendents, our community was so respectful and so responsive. Because it meant so much.
Yes.
And so,
yes.
And school means so much that in the end, I think that hopefully, the greater people that make better, bigger decisions than I make, will understand the need for us. If we're really going to open California up, we need to be respectful of the schools.
Yes, I just think, just from a practical perspective, unless they can clean up at least the mask mandates by September, it's going to put pressure on attendance. I mean, it's just from human nature. There's going to be little, as parents, you're trying. The kids are going.
Right.
I'm not. It's.
Yeah, and it is one of those things that I think all of us, even in the spring, with the social distancing, we would certainly remind our students. But our message, and I don't think I was alone, but my message is that, this is not a discipline issue. This is not a power struggle. You remind someone, but, you allow kids to be kids.
Because you have little ones.
Yeah.
You have little ones.
Yeah.
That's just,
But even our big ones, they need to play. Yes. They need to be, they need
and the teachers need to play a little bit too.
Exactly. So, it's one of those things that you take seriously, and you want to make sure that you're doing all that you can.
Yeah.
But you also, we don't want it to be a situation where it's, there's that pressure of, that's the end all be all, because then the focus is off of what we're there for.
On that, as a new superintendent coming into a district, what would you like? I mean, what plans do you have? I mean, aside from what would you like to see for Mark Twain over the next few years? I mean, what would you mean? Do you have some?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I would like us to be the school of choice in the Greater Valley.
Got it.
Where, our counterparts to the west of Copperopolis are heading to Angels Camp and to Copper
Very nice.
to go to school. So that's my goal.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of work with regard to relationship and connectivity and the importance of relationships in achievement. And so we'll continue that work. That's been a passion of mine for a long time, and I was successful in my previous district to have that to be the underpinning and really have that foundational relationship to build achievement. And so we'll continue. We started tipping that this year, and of course with the mental health component that we know is very real with regard to, and was exacerbated with the pandemic. That's real work that we need to do. Yeah. And our teachers and our staff are the perfect people to do that. And they've been doing it for, hundreds of years.
Yeah.
You're taught, the person that most influences you is often someone that you had in school. And so we need to continue that in just a greater and more purposeful and mindful way. Yeah. And allow kids to learn first by relationship and then by the book.
Yeah. So. As far as the teaching profession, how are you? Are you seeing are there openings for teachers? Or is it staff? I mean, how are you looking as far as getting teachers now?
Yeah, we need teachers.
You do. Okay.
We have a couple of openings, but where you used to have 20, 30, 40 applicants, you're lucky if you get one or two.
Wow.
And that's statewide.
Wow.
And nationwide, actually. Right. We're having, many people are old like me and starting to retire, and we don't have the ability to fill those positions like we used to. We really have to work hard and recruit. Here, it's particularly hard because of housing. Right. We can't compete with wages, and then also if we do have someone move in, it's trying to find housing is a big thing, and just availability. My understanding is you guys were talking earlier about the Butte fire, and my understanding is that took a lot
of rooftops.
And so we fight that, but we are constantly trying to figure out how to creatively recruit. But people aren't going into education. It's not that field that is attracting people, and so we're always hopeful. We're running a summer school this summer that an enrichment and academic oriented program, and we actually have 10 high school students. And I'm banking on that they're going to become teachers in 8 years.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you for
John.
Joining us, and thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for helping out the students of the county. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too.